In the early 1960s, stock car racing was evolving faster than anyone could have imagined. What had started as a regional southern pastime rooted in moonshine runs and dirt tracks was rapidly becoming a national obsession. The grandstands were filling up with tens of thousands of fans. Television networks were beginning to broadcast races coast to coast. The roar of engines was no longer just entertainment. It was a spectacle that could influence car sales, brand loyalty, and the very future of American motorsports. Manufacturers quickly realized one undeniable truth: winning on Sunday meant selling cars on Monday. Ford wanted dominance. Chevrolet wanted relevance. But Chrysler had a different plan. They didn't just want to compete, they wanted to reshape the sport entirely. They wanted to build something so powerful, so revolutionary, that no one could touch it. That ambition reached a tipping point in 1964 at the Daytona 500. The checkered flag fell, and Richard Petty crossed the finish line completely alone. Not seconds ahead, not just a few car lengths, a full lap ahead of the nearest competitor. In the world of stock car racing, that kind of dominance was almost unthinkable. And for fans watching at home or packed into the stands, it was a jaw-dropping moment that made everyone take notice. The real shock wasn't just the margin of victory, it was the engine powering that victory. At that time, NASCAR was still technically a stock car series. The rules dictated that the cars on track should resemble vehicles that everyday Americans could buy from a dealership. But in practice, manufacturers were pushing every limit to gain an edge. Engines were bigger, components were lighter, aerodynamics were subtly tweaked. And behind all that, Chrysler had been quietly working on an idea that would change everything: the hemispherical combustion chamber. This wasn't some new fad. Engineers had known for decades that a dome-shaped combustion chamber allowed for better airflow and more complete combustion. But Chrysler's team took that principle and turned it into a 426 cubic-inch V8 engine that was more than just powerful. It was a weapon. They called it the 426 Hemi, and it was designed to dominate the track in a way that no engine had ever done before. When the Hemi-powered Plymouth and Dodge cars hit Daytona, it wasn't just competition, it was a statement. Hemi cars finished first, second, and third, sweeping the podium in a way that made other manufacturers look unprepared. Richard Petty's win felt almost scripted, but it wasn't luck, it was engineering. The Hemi had rewritten the rules of speed before NASCAR even had a chance to react. NASCAR faced a problem. The sport thrived on uncertainty. Fans wanted close racing, unpredictable finishes, and drama. If one engine was capable of running away with races consistently, the spectacle would suffer. Ford was furious. Chevrolet was alarmed. But on paper, the Hemi was legal. It technically met the stock car requirements, at least just enough to avoid an outright ban. Instead, NASCAR made a different choice. They rewrote the rules. For the 1965 season, they mandated that engines must be readily available to the general public through normal dealership channels. The Hemi, expensive and clearly built for racing, didn't qualify. Just like that, the engine that had dominated Daytona and every major track was banned from competition. Chrysler's response was dramatic. They didn't negotiate. They didn't compromise. They walked away entirely. No factory-backed Chrysler cars appeared at the 1965 Daytona 500. and even Richard Petty stayed home. The race went on, but something crucial was missing: the intensity, the innovation, the fearsome competition. Fans could feel it. The stands were quieter. The victory felt hollow. Meanwhile, the Hemi didn't disappear. It moved to drag racing, where it dominated every field it entered. The media noticed. Fans noticed. And NASCAR noticed. Pressure mounted to bring Chrysler back, and behind the scenes, negotiations began to resolve the standoff. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments below. I'd love to see how far the legend of the 426 Hemi has traveled. Because what happened next would change NASCAR forever. Chrysler's Hemi might have been out of NASCAR, but it wasn't out of the public eye. On drag strips across the country, the engine continued to dominate. Its reputation grew, its mystique deepened, and the racing world knew that NASCAR had created a void that needed to be filled. Fans missed the raw power and unmatched performance that only a Hemi car could deliver. Eventually, compromise became inevitable. NASCAR allowed Chrysler to return, but with one strict condition. The company had to produce a street-legal version of the Hemi engine that regular Americans could buy. In 1966, Chrysler delivered. The street Hemi was loud, expensive, and impractical for everyday driving, but it met NASCAR's requirements and brought the Hemi back into stock car racing. Yet, even with these limitations, the Hemi remained formidable. Chrysler teams still dominated races, leaving competitors scrambling to keep up. NASCAR faced a difficult problem. How do you allow one of the most powerful engines ever built to compete without ruining the competitive balance? The answer came in the form of rules targeting the Hemi specifically. Weight limits were increased, airflow was restricted, carburetors were downsized. These weren't adjustments for fairness, they were restrictions to control one engine. Over the years, engineers and officials engaged in a high-stakes cat-and-mouse game. Chrysler found loopholes, NASCAR closed them, and the rulebook was rewritten repeatedly. Each race felt like a battle, not just between drivers, but between technology and regulation. By the early 1970s, the landscape of racing and the world had changed. Rising fuel prices, new emissions regulations, and shrinking corporate budgets meant that the era of unlimited horsepower was ending. In 1971, NASCAR implemented rules that effectively neutralized the Hemi's advantage. Chrysler withdrew factory support, and the era of the 426 Hemi in top-level stock car racing came to an end. Yet the Hemi's legend only grew. Hemi-powered cars became coveted collector vehicles. Drag racers continued to chase its raw power. Decades later, Chrysler would revive the Hemi name because it still carried a legacy of dominance, innovation, and controversy. The 426 Hemi wasn't remembered because it was fair. It was remembered because it was too good. It forced NASCAR and the entire world of motorsports to ask an enduring question: how much innovation is too much? Sometimes the best machines don't just win, they force entire sports to evolve, to change, to rewrite the rules. And that's why the 426 Hemi isn't just an engine, it's a legend, a cautionary tale, a triumph of engineering that remains unmatched in the history of American racing. It's proof that sometimes being too good can change everything. If you enjoyed this story and want more incredible racing history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. New videos drop every day, diving deep into the machines, the legends, and the moments that shaped motorsports as we know it.